Hey everyone, back today to make a apple spice cake. I showed you how I make the cupcake version, but this time I'll be making the full cake size version. And this is what we're going for, but only half of it will have nuts, and I'll show you how I do that. So first thing I have to do is peel and coarsely chop it calls for Honeycrisp apples, but I'm in Virginia where I have access to several hundred varieties of apples, and while I do like Honeycrisp, they are not my favorite. Neither are these actually. So this is an Evercrisp apple, a cousin to the Honeycrisp. And this is about a month old. So these were picked back in early October, probably maybe even late September. And so they're starting to get wrinkly, starting to break down. They had some damage there. So I'm going to turn them into a cake because I don't really like eating them raw. These are not my favorite taste. So if you've ever heard someone say something about an apple getting mealy, if you look at this, so you can see the texture there, how it has like wrinkles. This is an apple that is starting to break down and it's starting to go rotten. So it gets that mealy texture to it because it's an old apple. Typically a fresh apple is not going to have that. So these are perfect for cooking, perfect for baking with. I have already I've washed and peeled several of these. You'll see I only have like half apples here. It's because they were bruised, damaged, had some issues going on. So I need 4 of these peeled and chopped. So I'll show you how I peel these. You probably already know, but if you're someone who doesn't like to peel with a knife, who peels with a peeler or one of those devices that you put on the end of the table and you crank it and it peels it and spiralizes it, that's great. I have that too, but I find that I am faster and better at it if I just use my hands and a knife. You'll see there's quite a few bad spots on this apple. It's partially where it's getting old. Sorry, my oven just preheated. It's partially because it's getting old, but it's also partially because there's some bug damage here. There's also some late frost damage. The mountains of Virginia had a late frost this year in early April that damaged a lot of these later apples. So the crops were a lot less, crops were more damaged, so they don't last as long, and you just have a harder time marketing them. These were technically seconds, so apples are sold typically in first or seconds. First being your high quality supermarket apple that shouldn't have any blemishes, shouldn't have any bug marks, should be perfectly round and even all the way around. And then your seconds are ones that might have a bruise or a bug mark, or maybe their stem was detached from the apple, from the top of the apple. That's something else. If you're someone who likes to have apples to store at home, if you like to stock up on your apples, make sure your apples still have their stem where they were attached to the tree. As soon as that stem is gone, you have an open hole there that allows moisture to seep away from your apple, making it go bad faster. So make sure you have that on top of your apple still. Or if you don't have a stem on there, just make sure you use it faster. So apples don't really like being refrigerated. They like being kept cool, but they don't like being refrigerated. So this time of year, you can, in this area, you can keep them on a nice cool shaded porch. Just protect them from the wildlife. You also can keep them in a basement, a crawl space, somewhere that just stays cooler. Not anywhere near a heat vent, etc. But anyways, going back to the seconds thing, because I don't know that I explained that all the way. Seconds apples are typically sold for a lower price than first. But these were not. These were mixed in and sold as first. So I tried to get the most first type apple out of them since I was paying a higher price for them. Usually I buy super cheap apples by going to one of the Amish auctions or going to the orchards and getting seconds in a bushel box that's already been picked for me. But I decided this year I just don't need as many apples. I have a bunch still canned from last year and probably the year before. So I just thought I'd get a collection of a bunch of different types of apples and really do some taste tests and see which ones I like. Try some new ones. And that was great. I don't think I found any new ones that I liked more than my standards, but that's okay. If you are in Virginia and are able to get access to the variety of apples we have here, some of my favorites, if you're going after a summer apple, so I guess let me back up and explain a little bit about our apple crops here. So in Virginia, and it's probably like this elsewhere, our apple crops come in staggered. So we have early, mid, and late variety apples, and then variations therein. And typically how those work is your early apples, so which are typically early summer, around June, early July. Those apples are going to be what a lot of people call cooking apples. So they may be the hard green ones you have to cook down on the stove. They're real sour. And that's traditionally how our early apples would be. They've started cultivating some newer varieties, so we are starting to see some sweet early varieties. My favorite is the Ginger Gold, which comes out of Nelson County, and it was actually found, the tree was found right after Hurricane Camille, when it came through and decimated everything. Someone was walking around and found this tree with apples on it and really, really liked it because, like I said, he finally had a sweet early apple rather than a tart cooking apple. So that's where that one came from. It's really hard to get your hands on. It was really, I didn't get my hands on any actually this year. I think I saw them being sold in one or two places, but I didn't get any. But they are my absolute favorite. And if you can get your hands on those are wonderful. Mid-season varieties are more your Honey Crisps, your Galas, your Fujis, all those kind of standard box store kinds. And then your late season varieties are more of your heirloom apples, your wine saps, your stamens, those sorts. And then kind of a little newer to the scene is a Pink Lady, which are my absolute favorite late season apple. So the difference between them, so like we were saying, the early season ones traditionally had to be cooked to be eaten, but the other thing with the early season apples is they tend to have a lot more sugar content, so they're much sweeter apple, the new varieties they're putting out. And so because they have more sugar content, they don't last as long. They don't store well. They're something you have to go ahead and eat. So you eat them raw or turn them into applesauce or pies or something, but they have to be consumed rather quickly because they're going to go bad. But as you get closer to fall, late fall, the apple varieties start changing into varieties that are designed to store better. So your later apples, like the ones we were talking about, Wineseps, Stamens, Pink Ladies especially, are going to last much longer. They're going to be a much better keeper apple. And if stored properly, so kept somewhere cool, out of the sun, out of high humidity, those apples are going to last you 3, 4, maybe more months, and be delicious and crisp every single time. So for me, I like to wait and get apples this time of year so that I can get those apples that are going to stay good for much longer, so I have a better keeping apple. But anyways, that's my big spiel on apples, and probably a little bit more than you wanted to know about them. But being from Virginia and being from a family that's very agriculture minded, we support our local farmers as much as we can. And so naturally, since I was really young, we have taken that fall apple orchard trip way before it was cool to do, and have gathered our apples, picked our apples, collected our apples, preserved them, had them all winter, made them into all sorts of various things, and we all have our favorites. So next time you pick up an apple or consume an apple product, just know there's a lot more involved than just Red Delicious or Granny Smith. And see if there's any local orchards in your area and see what varieties they grow. I can tell you the fresher an apple is, the much tastier it is. So if you can get your hands on close local apples, those are the ones you want. And I'm sure people watching are cringing at my knife skills. I do take a lot of chances that I probably shouldn't take, but that's just how I do it. And you'll notice I switched knives. So I started with this little Rada knife, completely all one-piece metal. And it's perfect for peeling because it's flexible. So you'll see how well it can bend. And that allows it to bend going around things like an apple. And it works really well for peeling. And not much else, honestly, because it's not really strong enough to do the chopping part like we're doing now. This knife is an old, solid one-piece metal knife that I got from my great-grandmother. So it's ancient, it's super heavy, super sturdy. I am not bending this, but I can get it super, super sharp. And it does a great job chopping. So those are my apples, all chopped and ready to go. The recipe calls for 1-inch pieces, but that's really big, and I don't like how 1-inch pieces cook. So I have more like 1 centimeter or 1/2 inch pieces. and some even smaller than that, because I like them to kind of cook down and become part of the cake rather than a crunchy bite. So here's my apples ready to go, and now I'm going to switch over to my mixer and I'll be right back. All right, so now we're back and we're going to start adding everything to our mixer. So I need to start by mixing in my sugar, oil, eggs, and vanilla. So I need 2 cups of sugar. Okay. 2 cups of sugar. Put that back where it goes. Okay. 1/2 cup of canola oil. I don't use canola oil. It's just personal preference. So this is actually a combination of a 1/4 cup of peanut oil and a 1/4 cup of avocado oil to make a total 1/2 cup. And the reason I use that blend, I could just use peanut oil, but the reason I don't use straight avocado oil is that I'm a little bit nervous that avocado oil is causing migraines for me. I am prone to migraines and it seems to be a trigger. So I found that if I just use a little bit, my system can handle it. So that's why I'm doing it that way. Then I'm going to add 2 eggs. Well, I'm going to add my vanilla first, actually. This is homemade vanilla, so you can see the pods in there working. And I can't take credit for this. My roommate makes her own vanilla. I need 2 teaspoons, so we're going to say 1, 2. All right. Then 2 eggs. And if you've been around for a while, you know I always take the risk and just break them over the bowl. You can absolutely do them differently if you'd like to. So I'm going to let this mix together while I wash my hands. Okay. Now, our next step is, let's see, to add in everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding in my pie spice. I don't buy regular pie spice. I just make my own. So this calls for 1 tablespoon of pumpkin spice, which you probably already know is 3 teaspoons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split that amount between the spices that are typically in pumpkin spice. So 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1 teaspoon of ginger. And then I'm going to do 1/4 each of cloves and nutmeg. And if you prefer any of those spices over the other ones, you can absolutely change those ratios up. That's just what works for me. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, which I keep in a glass jar, nice and sealed, because your baking powder will lose its potency if you leave it out exposed to the air. and the moisture. So I need 2 teaspoons here. Baking powder. Now the recipe says to mix all of these dry ingredients together in a separate bowl and then mix them in. But if you've been here long enough, you know I don't do that. And that's simply because I don't like doing dishes. I don't like making more mess than I need to. A teaspoon of salt. So now I know all of these things over here I've used. I like to push them out of the way and out of sight, out of mind. Next thing then is my 1/2 cup of buttermilk, which I always have to create. So we're going to use what's left of this heavy cream, which looks like it's going to be perfect. Yep. Plus a dash of white vinegar. Alright. And then we're going to let that sit for a minute while we start putting in our flour. So we need 2 cups of just regular all-purpose flour. Actually, I'm going to give this a blend real quick just to get those spices evenly distributed. Oh, that smells so good. One day we will have smell-o-vision. Alright, so now I need 2 cups of flour, but I'm going to put in the 1 cup first. And hopefully only in the mixer. Give that a little mix. Alright, my bowl keeps escaping. Next, I'm going to add in that buttermilk, and you can see where it has foamed up on top. That's where the vinegar has caused the fat to separate out. Alright. And it, like I said, it calls for buttermilk, so you can absolutely use buttermilk. Typically, if you're substituting something else for buttermilk, you use whole milk and you add the vinegar. I use heavy cream just because that's typically what I have. So we're going to give this a mix for a moment. Alright, and we'll add the last of the flour. Alright, now I'm going to grab a spatula and get all these edges down in there nice and clean. And then scrape the bottom. Make sure no dry ingredients were left behind. Alright. Whoop. And make a mess. And we're going to let this go again for a second. So, right, we're calling that done. So now the next thing I need to do is remove it from my mixer. Get as much of the batter off of here as I can. By all means, you do you. You can just chuck this in the sink with everything on it if you want to, but I just can't do it. All right, take this off of my mixer before I make more mess. Get my mixer out of the way. I'm gonna get that all over me. All right. Next thing is to mix in our apples. I'm gonna bring them. And this is where apples go all over your kitchen. I would say, I didn't measure it, but I would say that this ends up being about 6 cups of apples when you dice them that small. All right. There's that. And then I'm going to give these a mix. Zoom you in a little bit. So that's what you're looking for. It kind of looks like caramel apple, actually. But it smells amazing. So now I'm going to set that to the side for a second, and I'm going to grab my cake pans and my walnuts. All right, so we're back. I have my 2 9-inch cake pans, and I have sprayed them with baking spray. And I have my scale here, and I have it tiered so it's not recording the weight of the pan itself. And we're going to see how close to half we can do this. Hopefully pretty close. 758. I think it's amazing that the pans weigh exactly the same. Because you would think there'd be some discrepancy in their weights just from manufacturing. And there probably is a minuscule amount, but it's not as much as a gram, which is interesting. Alright, so let's see how close we were. I was too busy talking and forgot what my original number was. Ooh, much different. Take a batch out of this one. $7.78 versus $7.65. I swapped them. All right, so 70.71 and $7.79. goodness. Well, there's a little left over here. Put that in there. And we'll grab. I'm sorry, I have to be precise. It's just the way my brain works. Alright, now we should be really close, if not exact. That works for me. So, next step is make sure they're nice and level and kind of get the air bubbles out. I can tell you, even the batter is absolutely delicious. So this next part is optional. You don't have to do it. The recipe calls for walnuts, and it actually calls for them to have been mixed in the batter already. But I don't. The people I'm making this for, only some of us like nuts and the others don't. So what I'm going to do is I can either mix the nuts into one cake and then cut it in half, or I can mix the nuts into half of each one and then do it that way. I think I would rather not have a split down the middle of my cake. So I'm going to mix it into half of each cake. And if you're making this for someone who's allergic to these nuts, please, by all means, do not do this. This will not work for someone who's allergic to nuts. The oils will still intermingle and mix, and you'll have a mess. So don't do that. Right. And you can use fewer nuts, more nuts, however you want to do it. This is just how I'm choosing to do this version. All right. We'll do the same on this side. And if you're going to do it where you make one layer have nuts and one layer doesn't, you can actually put half of your batter in the one cake pan, and then the other, then with the other half, go ahead and mix your nuts in it before you put it in the pan. Because this is fiddly and it's a little more difficult to do. All right, so that's basically half and half. So now I'm going to get these in the oven. They bake on at 350 for 35 minutes. So we'll see how it goes. I'll be back. Okay, so time to make the icing. I have 1 stick of butter and 1 block of cream cheese in here, and they have been softened. Okay, now that's nice and smooth. Everybody's incorporated together. I'm going to add 1 cup of brown sugar. I give that a little mix so that I can get started. Okay. Then I'm going to add 1 cup of powdered sugar. And that is another 1 cup of powdered sugar. Alright, then we need 1½ teaspoons of vanilla. Alright. And a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. I'm just going to use cinnamon this time. Alright, and now I'm just going to mix this until it's nice and incorporated and light and fluffy. And that's what we're looking for. Nice and light and fluffy and well incorporated. Alright, now I'm going to get my cakes over here and get them frosted. Okay, so here's the cakes out of the oven. I've taken this one out of the pan. And you'll see that I have these little icing spots. That's to remind me that the left side of this pan has nuts in it, and you can see them. And this side is nut-free. And I'm not entirely surprised that the left side stuck a little bit because I mixed in the spray on the pan when I mixed the nuts in. So, I need to get the icing off of the speeder real quick, sorry. Alright. Now what I'm going to do, so this is my icing right out of the mixer. I haven't put this in the fridge or anything like that. It's just going right on my cooled cake. And you can absolutely chill this first if you want to. That's fine. I'm just doing it this way because I want to have it in the next 30 minutes. So I got my offset spatula, and I'm going to go around. And you want to go all the way to the edges. If this icing were chilled, this would be much more difficult. But since it's not a big deal. All right, so now I can put my second cake on top, but I want to make sure, so I put my dots that tell me there's nuts on this left side, because I want to line this cake up the same way. And so a trick to get a cake out of a pan is to shake it side to side, and you'll feel it come free and to start sliding around in your pan. So, let's see, the nuts are right there. So I'm going to flip it like this. And it's going to stick a little bit. I should have taken these cakes out not long after they cooled a bit, but I didn't. I let them cool completely in the pan, and that sometimes makes it a little bit harder to get them out. Nope, did you see it pop free there? All right, let me make sure my nuts are lined up correctly. All right, so I'll do it like this, and put it right on top like so. Okay. And you can see the nuts are on this left-hand side again. They might be a little bit off. There we go. All right, then I'm going to put all the rest of this frosting right on top. All right, so now I'm going to work this over the edge. And you'll see some speckles in here. It's where I didn't sift my brown sugar, nor did I sift my powdered sugar. So there's some little hard spots that didn't dissolve. That's a piece of butter. But they'll be okay. I'm just making this for my family, so we're not picky. It doesn't change the cake or the texture. And just work your way around. And you're making the icing fall over the sides at the same time. I really should have sifted my powdered sugar. I didn't realize it had gotten so clumpy. But that's all right. All right, now we'll start working around the edges. And this is where you may lose your markers, telling you what side is which, so just be mindful of that. And actually, we'll put a mark here saying the nuts are on this side because I'm going to finish the top off last. I'm going to run my finger around the edge. Just to get that extra icing off the edge. Make it look a little better. All right. And you can put sprinkles on top of this. You can pipe the icing if you'd rather. But there it is. The beautiful apple spice cake with brown sugar frosting. I hope you enjoy. I hope you'll give this a try. I'll post the recipe link in the description so you can see it. And remember, this is just the beginning of the fall and holiday baking season. So if you want to see more recipes like this, subscribe, follow along, because there'll be plenty coming. Thanks for watching.